I would ask that everyone please stand. And for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I would ask for a moment of silence for two former Southington School employees, Patricia Langdon, who passed away on July 13th of this year. Patricia taught health at Southington Public Schools from 1982 to 1999. And Jeannie Schumann, who passed away on July 17th of this year. Jeannie was a former science teacher and guidance counselor at Southington Public Schools from 1975 until her retirement in 2002. So a moment of silence for them both, please. Thank you. Mr. Daranowski, before we get to our administrative introductions, I'd look for a motion, please.
I'd like to move item 10, 1, 2, and 3 to 5. D.
D. Okay. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. All right. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mr. Medancy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening is a special celebration for us. As many people are aware, we did undergo the interview and hiring process early in the summer so that we could make sure we had people on board and ready to start in time for the start of the school year. But we never had that chance to formally welcome and celebrate their appointments. And I'm really excited. We have a very talented group of administrators joining our team, very deserving and worthy, and I'm sure excited as well for their first day of school and to officially get started in their new roles. First, I'd like to welcome Mrs. Rita Stearns as the principal of South End Elementary School, formally to the position. So, Mrs. Stearns.
Come on up.
I just want to say thank you. I am back where I started. My first full-time job was at South End School teaching 5th grade, and I went to several schools, and I feel like I've looped back, and I'm back in the neighborhood where I started. I'm back with families that I know, teachers that I know, support staff, administrators that I know. There's so many people that I want to thank, but I won't. I'm looking at the teleprompter, and I know I have a certain time before you go to commercial. Karen Smith, Betty Lutz, Sally Kamerbake, all were mentors to me. And when Karen Smith says to you, hey, kid, you know what you should do? You should go get an 092. And this is where I ended up because of Karen Smith and her confidence and just the people that Southington has and the leadership that I feel lucky to follow. The elementary principals current have been fantastic. I get a text, I get an email, I get a, hey, this is what you need to do. I feel the support from everywhere. I am so excited to go. I want the first day here. I'm ready to go. I'm kind of waiting for kids. I'm like looking at kids at the playscape. Hey, you want to play? All right, I don't do that. But I'm ready, and I'm so thankful for this opportunity, and I really cannot wait to get started. So again, thank you so much.
Yay.
So the next administrator that I would like to formally welcome and introduce to the community is Mrs. Simone Crouch. And this is an interesting introduction for me because years ago, I don't want to mention how many years ago, but Mrs. Simone Crouch was a 3rd grade teacher at the same elementary school I was teaching physical education. And then our paths separated ways for many years until we reconnected here in Southington. And so worthy, so deserving, and I'm so excited also to work alongside Simone and watch her continue to grow as one of our newly appointed administrators. So, Mrs. Simone Crouch.
wave for you.
I'm not as good as Rita, so I had to write it down. But thank you, Steve, for that introduction. I'm so glad that you mentioned that because those were fantastic memories, right? When we were in Parker Farms together, it was a beautiful thing. So Steve mentioned I came from Wallingford. My first experience here in Southington was in 2019. I came to Southington looking for some new experiences, and I got them. I had a global pandemic, restructuring of a whole department, online learning. It's been a very interesting experience here in Southington, and I have to just say I've loved every single challenge that's come across my plate. I've had, just as Rita mentioned, tremendous support. There's no words to describe just how appreciative I am of the support that I've gotten since I've been here. So I just want to extend my thank you to both Frank and Steve and to the board members for believing in me and providing me with this opportunity and giving me the chance. I want to say thank you to my team members and my mentors at the high school who every day answer a million questions. Mike Crocco, Leah Clark, Mike Halloran, Richard Royan, Jen DeSenza. I couldn't do anything if I didn't have them, by my side helping me out. So I'm looking forward to continuing to serve Southington, the students of Southington and the families of Southington, as well as the staff. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, I would also like to formally welcome and introduce to you Mrs. Alicia Naleway as the district's new K-8 math and K-5 science coordinator. Alicia comes to us from the Cheshire Public Schools. I had the opportunity to speak with the Cheshire superintendent this summer over lunch, and he informed me at that time that he was stealing one of our kindergarten teachers, and she happened to be a good teacher, and he said, "But don't you worry," he said, "because you stole a star from me." So we called it a fair trade and split the bill. But at the end of the day, I'm so excited that Alicia is joining us. So Mrs. Alicia Naleway.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. I hope I live up to the superintendent. I am so excited to be here in Southington. Being in the neighboring town of Cheshire, I've heard such wonderful things about Southington and the community that's here, so I can't wait to become a part of it. As was mentioned, I spent most of my career in Cheshire, and I'm passionate about education, passionate about curriculum and helping all students to achieve at their highest potential. So I just can't wait to dig into the work. Everyone has been so welcoming to me, and I'm so appreciative of all the support that I've received. And I really am excited to continue the next step of my journey with Southington Public Schools. So thank you.
Welcome. We're going to take a 5-minute recess so we can welcome, the board members can welcome our new staff members, and after that, you're allowed to leave. You don't have to stay for the meeting. Okay, just saying. Okay, so 5 minutes. Let's go. You made a mess. Meeting,
Well, we lost everybody.
well, you didn't expect to keep everybody.
Apparently, we are not the popular ones in the room.
You think? Okay. We moved up item 10A, B, and C up to 5D. The approval of the out-of-state overnight field trips. Do I have a motion?
Yes, move to approve the overnight field trips as submitted.
Second.
Any discussion? This is hard. Okay, yes, have a good time. Is there anything you wanted to share with the board about this? I know Mrs. Osias would like to get back to band camp, so, Mr.
I think these are
Darrenowski.
all great.
Yeah.
But, you know, the standard precautions are in place, so in the event of, so that
Yeah.
everybody's aware, so.
Okay. So all those, Mrs. Carmen?
Colleen, so this is all for one,
All three, yep, all three.
Yeah.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No okay. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening. Good
Have a
luck.
good evening. Enjoy camp.
Thank you for coming.
Have fun.
What happens at band camp is always more fun.
Indeed it is. Okay. Next on the agenda, communication from Board of Ed members. Great summer? Good. Okay, good. Anyone else?
Just so wonderful to be back.
Okay, moving right along. Communication from the administration. Mr. Bedancy.
Thank you. Just a few brief announcements. One, I just want to publicly acknowledge and thank, and according with policy, we'll obviously send the letter as well, but the Connecticut Lightning Softball Association and United States Specialty Sports Association made a donation to Hatton Elementary School, similar in nature to those of you, if you remember, the Achieve Room at the high school in terms of some sensory equipment and type of, materials like that. So they're, in the process of putting the orders together, putting the space together, and similar to what we did Achieve, we'll do some sort of formal recognition ceremony for the opening of that space and invite you all when the time comes.
Excellent, excellent.
We also have the Spirit of Beth Telfer Fund of the Community Foundation of Greater New Britain. There was a donation made by the family of $720 to the Southington Family Resource Center, which is great for them in terms of resources and materials. Wanted to apprise the board of this. There's no action needed, but the town did authorize the town manager to pursue a steep grant to potentially award some funds to track and field renovations at the high school. I think originally, and it was discussed at their meeting Monday evening, they were pursuing a project on West Center Street. And if it's not shovel-ready, then you can't submit the grant. But because we know we did have plans developed because of the referendum last fall, our plans are ready to go. If so, we're going to submit the grant. It is a town submission, but if we get it, it certainly could help us to move that portion of the project forward with state funding, which would be great. So I will keep you all apprised once we know. The deadline is for submission is tomorrow. So, a thank you to Mr. Romano, Lou Perillo from the town is working on this, Mr. Shoda, to try and submit in time. So we definitely appreciate that as well.
How many times a week can we ask you?
I wouldn't, if you're looking for a decision from the state, it'll be one of those, I'll call you, don't call me types of things.
Okay.
So, and then, and Mr. Palmieri had attended and was, persistent in making sure that we applied for something. The problem with these grants is you don't know when they're going to be announced. So it is one of those things of just trying to always be ready. So if they do announce it, and you don't know what the likelihood of getting an award is, which is part of the complexity, I think, with that particular grant. Also, when the Board of Finance, I had shared with you in my last update that the Board of Finance had unanimously approved the prioritized list that you all approved in June for the safety enhancements. And so the town council formally accepted those minutes as part of the Board of Finance minutes at Monday evening's meeting. So Mr. Romano and I are ready to get going right away. And if you remember the list, we had the projects prioritized in groups. And so we'll be starting with Group 1 ASAP. And I will keep you updated of progress as that occurs. And then lastly, we had the legal update Monday morning. it's part of our way to make sure that our administrators are ready to go back to school, that we wake them up with all of the wonderful outcomes associated with the past legislative session, the impact on policy, on their practice at the building level, and Shipman and Goodwin did not disappoint in overwhelming us with all of the updates and mandates. I will, at a future meeting, and probably prior to budget season, and also maybe with the Board of Finance and Town Council, provide a list of unfunded mandates that came from that session. There's just a lot of things that cost money that aren't coming with these mandates. And so I'll give you a simple example, but the mandatory professional development for paraeducators
18 hours.
Beyond the mandated trainings, which we've always paid our paras for as part of their professional development, now that cannot be included as part of the mandated 18 hours of training. So we're going to pay them for the mandated training, but now we have to pay them all an additional 18 hours of professional development that we will have to hold throughout the year, which obviously when we were doing a budget in the fall and even in the spring, nobody knew that legislation was bundled up somewhere in whether it was in the implementer bill or standalone, but it does result in us having to find funds now in terms of the salaries afforded with those folks. So, stay tuned on that front. We talked about the change in kindergarten age. We understand that we're going to need to do something next year for the kids that have already done preschool age 4 and preschool age 5 who may not be kindergarten eligible now in 2025. So some programming costs are going to be certainly associated with meeting the needs of those students. And so it's just that kind of stuff that I think there are intentions, but then there are the unintended consequences, and that's what we're continuing to see and realize. So I will keep you updated on that front when I compile a list and we can start to look at what the impact will be. And that's my report for this evening.
Any questions? Mr. Darrenowski?
Just a question. He did the football field, 10 or 12 years ago.
Mhm.
And at one point, we were putting $25,000 a year. We're still doing that, I believe.
Yep.
Could you find out how much money we have in that account?
I know the answer to that. We have roughly $400,000 right now towards that project. And what the town manager planned on putting in the next 2 to 3 years, he felt, would get us to the point that we would be for just the field, but that doesn't include the track and the resurfacing of the track. But there is also funds allocated in the capital project for 2025, capital improvement plan for 2025, that potentially, if we get awarded the STEEP grant, could maybe offset the costs of repairs to the bleachers, which would be great if we could do the bleachers, the track, and the field all at the same time. So we'll definitely keep you posted. It would be great if we get that grant.
Okay. Any other question? I just want to piggyback on what you said about the legal update from Monday, because I did attend it, and all I kept doing was adding up dollar signs with the consequences of actions. And they're well-intended. It's not that they're not well-intended, but the cost that comes with it that we're not getting funding for is just, it's going to be interesting. And if you're interested at all, I've started, but if you go on ctschoollaws.com, it is Shipman and Goodwin's explanation of the legislation, and there was even more dollar signs in that. So if you, in preparation, just so that you can see what's involved. So, thank you, Mr. Medancy. Communication from the public on agenda items only. Don't all jump up. Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay, moving right along. The committee reports. District-wide Facilities Committee, Mr. Medancy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This meeting happened quite a while ago now. It was on June 7th.
I forgot.
But we had, because we had canceled our second meeting in June and had no July meeting, this essentially this has been a benefit of the District-wide Facilities Committee. I think we're able to at least, short of the referendum, now have a guideline and kind of a roadmap relative to the funding and the capital improvement projects. So, it's pretty straightforward, as you can see within the minutes. The softball field is underway. Those cash funds were allocated. And so Mr. Romano has got pricing that right now we're approximately $100,000 under budget relative to this allocation for the lights. And we're hopeful that we can have them installed either late summer, but probably fall, so that the girls can play under the lights this coming season. So we're appreciative of the town's support of that. And then we have broken out the costs with bonding. There's no need to go to referendum as long as it's under $1 million. And so we've talked about what could be cash funded versus bonded versus referendum. But, along the lines of what we just talked about and the STEEP grant, you can see the track was designated as a 2025 repair. So if the STEEP grant could expedite that, that would be fantastic. That's all.
Okay. Any questions? Nope. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the personnel report. Do I have a-
Madam Chair, I moved that we recommend the Board of Ed approve the personnel report as submitted by the Human Resource Department.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Old business, town government communications. I don't have any. Anyone else have any? No? Okay. Next up is the Con Ed battery storage project.
Thank you. So I have with us this evening from RWE, I have Gregory Carey and David Rains. We've had some conversations, as you know. We had a presentation in the spring about a potential battery project at the two middle schools. There's been a lot of exchange of information relative to questions that we've received and tried to gather information, and they are here tonight to just engage with the board and to see if there is any further questions that they can answer or information they can provide in hopes of continuing to move forward with this project.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm Greg Carey. I'm project manager with RWE. With me is David Rains, Senior Director of Health and Safety at RWE. And on the phone, unfortunately, he can't be here, Gunter Schemen is a project engineer at RWE. And we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Adam Teff, who was here with us at the last meeting, could not attend. He's at a wedding tonight, so he sends his regrets. Since we met last, I would like to give you a couple of updates. I believe you have our updated presentation material, including a letter from the fire chief regarding our meeting with him back in June to go through our fire safety protocols and our plans. We had a very good meeting with the chief. David's here to address and answer any questions you may have regarding that meeting and our health and safety plan. In addition to that, I can tell you that we met with the town council has approved the battery storage at the wastewater treatment plant, and we now have an agreement with the town for a lease for that battery project at the treatment plant. So we are moving forward with that project. If I could, I'd just like to review with you a summary of the benefits to the town for the battery storage projects at the two schools. And this is on, I believe it's page 8 of the presentation material. There is no cost to the town for installing, maintaining, operating the battery storage. That is 100% on RWE. We'll take full responsibility for those aspects of the project. It will generate new revenues to the town, both in terms of an annual lease payment of $25,000. There will also be property taxes that will be paid for the equipment, and we are anticipating that there will be some energy savings as well. One other important, I think, item, benefit, if you will, to the town that we talked about briefly is the fact that the battery storage will be a source of backup power in the event of an emergency at either school. So if there's a blackout, emergency event, schools lose power, they'll be able to use power from the battery as emergency backup. I think that's an important element and benefit to the battery storage equipment at each school. And as you know, the state has committed to a zero carbon grid by the year 2040. And obviously, the Connecticut Green Bank initiated this program to contribute towards those goals. And A number of communities are considering battery storage, and hopefully it'll be adopted, and it'll be a better environment, a cleaner environment in terms of energy for everyone in the state of Connecticut. So with that, I know you've got a busy schedule. I wanted to keep our comments in brief and answer any questions you may have.
Diane?
Just to help me understand, we talked about, so the money, the power comes in, charges the batteries, right? That's coming through our, how do they get charged? Remind us again how they get charged.
Yeah, sure. Well, Gunter, you're on the phone? Did you hear the question?
The battery is charged from the grid, or the solar array can come from either one. It depends on the load. You know, if the solar array puts out more power than is used on the site, then the excess power would charge the battery. Otherwise, it can charge from the grid. Either way, it's behind the meter of the site, and any charging power, you know, is then going to be returned to the site or exported to the grid.
So that's the question. So who pays for the charging? Who pays for the power that charges the batteries?
Eversource.
So does it hit our
Meter?
account at all?
Yeah, it does go through your, I'm sorry, Gunter, I'm jumping into your territory, but it does go through your meter.
Yeah, and there will be a true-up done to account for any cost, if there's any cost increase due to the use of the battery, that will be compensated for.
Because I think that was a concern last time. I think the concern was that we were going to pay for the power to charge the battery, right?
No, that's not who I understand. So in the event your solar, so there's DC coupled, which is your solar panels. So it's DC power that could charge the battery. Then there's AC power, which is the Eversource power. Right? You're not going to be charged for the Eversource power going into the battery. All behind the meter connection.
So who pays for that?
That's the Eversource grid. So you're realizing the savings from any DC power. That's that makeup he's talking about, that differential. So if you have excess power coming off your solar panels and it's charging the battery, that's ultimately a balanced out credit that'll be metered out. Okay, in the event that your usage is lower than what the solar panels are generating. And I don't know that. I haven't looked at your charts and all that in the history, but you will not, go ahead, Gunther.
If I could just explain, what we would do is to do a true-up calculation. So we will have the utility bills that show the usage of the meter, which will include the battery. But we also have a meter at the battery, and so then we will subtract that out and get the usage of the site without the battery, and then run that through the billing process and see what the difference is. And any difference that is coming from the charging of the battery would be refunded to the school.
So there's no additional charge to answer your original question?
Yeah.
You're not,
We're not paying.
the town or the school system and their utility bill will not incur additional costs
Correct.
to charge the battery. And you would only further benefit if the DC power coming out of the solar array is being used, and that's that credit from behind the meter.
Because that's what I left last time a little unclear about that. I left last time thinking that we were going to be paying for the battery, the charging of the battery. And then the benefit was going to be is if we had to take power out of the battery into the school, we would be getting it at a lower price, and that's where the true-up came. That's not true.
The second part is true. If you use the storage, it's not at the same rate that you would coming off the pole.
Right.
But the first part is not. You're not going to be charged you're not going to be accountable for the energy being used to charge the battery.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have, sorry.
James?
So is this connected to the grid or to our school's power?
Both.
Both, okay.
Okay. Jasper?
Do you have any data from like any other clients or customers who have a similar load bank installed, like what their annual savings or any benefit that they've seen aside from the $25,000 lease? I I mean, is there any data out there from, that would be similar in comparison to what this installation would be, this project would be?
Like the Ardsley Middle School? Who is the Ardsley Middle School is one of your yeah, in Westchester,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, in Hartsdale.
That netted, there's not, because that's very new.
Okay.
So we're about $12,000. But the savings was about 12K. So we're gonna see how that looks over the next 3 years, 5 years. But unfortunately, it's just so new, you know, in taking and developing these stuff. But we can really model it, and we knew it was gonna be between $7,000 and $15,000. So it's about 12 right now. Which is on top of any lease payment that they're
Right.
getting,
We're-
you know, for their system.
Gunter has estimated a potential savings, and again, it's just an estimate, of between 5 and 20,000 between the two schools on an annual basis.
On an annual basis. Okay, yeah.
So the 25,000 per year, how did you get that number?
Basically, it was through financial modeling. What is the highest lease payment we could support in order to develop the project? And that's the payment that the council has accepted for the wastewater treatment plant. So it would be the same. There would be no difference between the wastewater treatment plant and the two schools.
And the challenge is with energy costs, energy uses, it's not fluid. So you gotta find that median.
Yeah, give yourself a buffer.
And yeah, and well, you know, again, we're seeing whatever source is doing to our bills at home, you know, or our businesses, and that wasn't expected in any model to take that kind of a hit.
Sorry if I can again, so
Yeah.
follow up to that, because I want to make sure I understood you. So 5 to 20K is the estimate. Does that, and that's before the $25,000 lease payment?
No, that's after. So the $25,000 annual lease payment is a guarantee, is a minimum
Yep.
of revenue to the schools. And then there will be an estimated 5 to 20,000 of additional savings, additional revenues from energy savings that we're projecting will come every year.
Sean, David?
I'm just curious, because we've been given a lot of data on these solar panels that have been popping up all over the school system, at different schools. And I haven't seen any information from anybody at town anyway as to how much these have generated. My question, though, is you're going to be paying for the installation of these batteries, which I can tell they're not inexpensive. You're going to be paying property tax on them. You're going to be paying a lease. Where these batteries, they're sitting here on our property, how do they generate revenue?
By Eversource, they'll be paying us revenue for the use of the batteries.
So Eversource is paying your company to put them on our property.
Well, they're paying them for the energy use. They're not paying for the equipment. We're paying for the equipment, but the revenue for the project is being generated through payments from Eversource.
So these batteries don't generate any revenue.
They probably charge on off-peak
If
hours.
I could explain for a moment.
Go ahead, Gunter.
There is so we're participating in a program called the Connecticut Energy Storage Solutions Program. And the payment that we would be getting is that mostly in the summer months, when the grid is experiencing high peak loads, that's when the battery would be discharging and helping to lower the peak load of the grid. And that's what the Eversource is compensating the program for.
So Eversource.
So it's arbitrage.
Benefit when they're running
It's
it like
a
during the
power
summer.
bank.
Correct.
They're trying to grow this across New England, well, the whole United States, but specifically with this program. They need to grow it, they need so many megawatts in order to minimize any potential for not having enough power, you know, to support the grid.
So, and some of my questioning, I think will align and answers some of your questions, but basically they're participating in a program. okay? That's, through the Connecticut Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, okay? It's called the Energy Storage Solutions Program, okay? And basically, by participating in this program, even though they have initial purchase and installation costs through this program that's linked in with Eversource and United,
Right.
United, they will receive payments. And so up to, this is a 10-year program that started actually in 2022, they will receive up to 50% of their project costs back through this program. So one of my questions is what's your project cost for each one of these installations?
Go to, you want to address that?
It's approximately, hold on a second. It's a little over 1.5 million.
And that's updated and accurate because the number that we received and that I was working off of was closer to 3 million.
Is it 3 million for both?
It runs about $1 million a megawatt, whether we're building it here or we're building it in Georgia. And this is just under a megawatt. And then you have all the rest of the development costs. But for the hard costs, it's about $1 million a megawatt across the industry.
Okay, can you talk to me a little bit about my understanding of this ESS program is that the batteries have to be discharged on a daily basis. Is that correct? Is my understanding of that correct?
That is only true in the summer months. So in the months of June, July, and August, there is something called a passive dispatch program. That is every weekday, every business day of the week. So holidays and weekends are not included. But on business day, weekdays, yes, that's correct. It would be discharging every day. That's part of this peak load reduction program that the utility is funding.
Oh, okay, so my follow-up question to that is, what's the expected discharge per event? What's the expected kilowatt discharge per event? And what's the expected incentive paid to RWE for each of those events? So first, kilowatts per event, and then based on that kilowatt discharge, what's the incentive paid to RWE?
So the incentive is, well, there's two incentives really. There's an upfront incentive that gets paid at the beginning of the program.
Correct, I understand that.
It becomes operational. And that is payment for the passive dispatch that's happening every day, unless there's a special event. So the passive discharge has a schedule. It's a 5-hour discharge that's same time every day. But then there's also something called an active dispatch. That is when the utility experiences a particularly high peak, and they will forecast when that peak happens, and then they will schedule that a day ahead. They will tell you, tomorrow discharge your battery from 4 to 7 p.m., for example. And that's typically a 3-hour discharge. The other one is a 5-hour discharge. And so the upfront incentive is for the passive dispatch, and then the active dispatch, where we have typically around 30 of them in the summer. For that one, there is the average discharge gets measured for the whole season. And then there's an incentive payment of, currently it's, in the beginning, it would be $200 per kilowatt for the season.
Correct.
And after 5 years, in year 6, it drops to $115 per kilowatt. That's the incentive that's locked in the program, the Energy Storage Solutions Program manual. You can see those numbers in that.
Oh, okay, and who and how determines what the kilowatt discharge is during those events?
So those 3-hour discharges, that will be limited by the battery capacity, the power capacity of the battery, which is about 770 kilowatts.
All right, so the maximum discharge per event is 770 kilowatts.
770 kilowatts, yeah, about.
And according to the materials we've gotten, those events are estimated to be, at least during the summer months, I'm seeing something between the range of 30 and 60 events. Is that correct?
Yeah, it could be up to 60, but historically it's been closer to 30.
Typically 3 times a week over 10 weeks. In the
There would
summer.
also be 5 events in the winter.
Okay, and you reference historically. Historically where?
So there is a program called the Connected Solutions Program. It's very similar to what we're talking about here, that it has these active dispatches. It does not have the passive dispatches though, and it does not have the upfront incentive. But it's the same hours, and so that's where we have the historic data for.
Okay, where is that program administered? This Connected Solutions Program that we're referencing for similar or historical data? Is that a Connecticut program?
Can you hear that, Gunter?
Yeah, it's Eversource is running that in Connecticut.
Okay. Interesting.
That's what this current program grew from. It went from just an active program to support peak load to a passive and active program.
Oh, okay, if you guys,
I think Terry had Terry,
A
did you have,
question?
Mrs. Carmody, did you have a question? Yeah.
yeah, go for it.
Okay.
I have several other questions, but interlude, please.
Is it possible for us to talk to a place where this, is it whether it be a school system or something that has used this battery system?
Sure.
You know, so we could ask them? Don't you think that might be
Yeah,
something,
that's.
that I?
How would you
because
do that?
It's difficult for me to understand, you know, Sean is much smarter and he's asking very pertinent questions. But I think it would also be very important for us to talk to, whether it's a school system or somewhere else who has installed this. And so we could ask them their opinion. Do you guys think that's a good
No,
idea?
no, I agree, because I would like to talk to it's a middle school in Westchester County.
Sure.
The Ardsley Middle School, which I believe is in Hartsdale. And I wouldn't mind having a conversation. Yeah, having a conversation with them to get.
We can arrange that.
Yeah, exactly, because what Sean and Gunter are talking about is stuff that's higher level that I'm not quite.
Me either.
Okay, we don't do math, but most of the time.
But I mean, wouldn't it be better?
No, I agree. In fact, I had told Mr. Medancy if I had the opportunity, I was going to take a road trip down there. I was just going to drive down because I wanted to see the footprint of it. But I like the idea if we could perhaps talk to their director of operations for that school district and see what they had to say about it.
I can work with Adam
Okay.
to see if we can't coordinate a virtual call with the representative
that would be
from the
great.
district that
That would
runs
be
their
good.
operations.
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
and-
Yeah, I would
Just so
like
that we could, I mean, you've got a lot of technical questions here that I think should be answered, need to be answered, because you want to know these questions, and I think,
Well, I mean, the reality is we owe it to
Exactly,
the
yeah.
taxpayers and residents
Yeah.
of this town to,
Yeah.
before we make a 10-year commitment,
Yeah.
what exactly we're committing to. And I, and it comes down to transparency, right? There are open questions and difficult questions, and some, again, to your point, may be technical, but it's important to have answers, right, before, don't put the carriage before the horse, so to speak. So, with that said, if we could make that conversation happen, that'd be great. I would like to ask a couple more questions, if you gentlemen
Sure,
would field them.
We want you to be comfortable. And just understand, you talked to Ardsley, the program's a little different. Technology's the same or similar, but the program's different. It's very different what Connecticut has put together versus what you're gonna see from NYSEG, New York State Electric and Gas, or what you're gonna see from Niagara Mohawk up north or whatnot. So just know that going in.
Okay.
And you may say, well, that's different than what they told us. Yes, it's a different program.
Yeah. Well, the programs are different, but the concept is still the same. The concept is still the same.
Something to
Yeah,
compare,
yeah,
you see.
yeah.
Technology-wise, the operation of it, the maintenance, very similar.
Okay,
You're gonna get, a good look at what.
Same equipment.
same
okay,
equipment.
okay.
Okay, I'll jump right in. Is, as part of the contractual lease agreement and the operating agreement, is there a tax agreement with the town, or is this equipment going to be subject to our grand list?
There is not a tax agreement. That's a conversation. If these projects move forward, if they're approved, that's a conversation that we would have with the town.
Okay. As far as the temperature, the operating temperature of these battery installations, what is it? And is there any, I guess, thermal penetration to the surrounding area? And if so, what's the temperature gradient increase, and how far away from these units?
I'll let David answer
Sure.
that.
So Tesla megapacks are monitored under a BMS, a battery management system. So we have thermocouples both at the batteries inside the enclosure. We have two levels of HVAC or cooling for this heating and cooling. So that you're gonna see about a 20-degree F delta from static to charge and discharge. It's not a lot. It's not like this thing ramps up. So if you put a thermal imaging camera on it, you'll see about a 20-degree increase. At the battery, you're not gonna see that at the enclosure. So you're not gonna see any change of temperature in the enclosure because of the way the thermodynamics are, of the way the batteries are in our cooling system. The whole key to eliminating thermal runaway with lithium-ion batteries is to keep them cool, to keep that delta, that change in temperature at a small bandwidth. So everything that goes into design in the BMS, and when we shut it down, so if there's any excursion of that temperature beyond, let's say that 20 degrees F, it's gonna shut the batteries down, and the cooling's gonna increase. That's why we have two levels of cooling. We have that static or passive cooling, which is your standard air conditioning system. Then we have the secondary system that would bring in additional cooling in the event there's a situation where there's more heat generated than you want. So, but what's critical with the Tesla Megapacks is that we monitor it within just a couple of degrees, a couple of amps, a couple of milliamps on the control, which is very little, and we shut it down. Because we don't want it to go anywhere near thermal runaway. Unlike an e-bike or electric car, which doesn't have that capacity built in. And you see these failures because the e-bike doesn't know that it's 60, 70 degrees hotter now because you're using an aftermarket charger and it's heating this battery up and then it fails. So we don't have those level of failures at these BMS or larger systems because we spend half of the money in design and installation in the BMS, the battery management system, that we monitor remotely, not just at the battery, so we know if there's an excursion, if we're generating heat. And heat is not our friend, as I think the point of your question, so we make sure that we keep that delta within 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And I can't quote you exactly, we can certainly send you the SDS of the operating temp, but I know the variable is about 20 degrees.
Okay, great. Thank you. As far as any off-gassing from these installations, is that contained within the installation? Is that something that's measurable? Is it even looked at? Obviously, if there's a catastrophic event, it's a major concern, but outside of that, under normal conditions and operation, is there off-gassing? Is it measured?
Under normal conditions, there's no off-gassing. The batteries, as they're generating energy through the internal chemical reaction, there's no off-gassing.
Okay.
Sealed unit. Only when that battery was to fail would you get, so what are we monitoring? We're monitoring hydrogen, because that's going to be the primary component that would build up. And then that's also set up at a very low threshold, so if there's any hydrogen within the battery compartment, it again shuts the system down, it ventilates, the ventilation system kicks in, and then it's being ventilated to a point where there's a cloud of hydrogen coming out, but just to minimize any buildup at all. And again, we're stopping that reaction by shutting off the AC power coming in, and it's not drawing any more power going out. So it's automatically hitting that E-stop, which is, again, part of that BMS that we monitor 24/7.
Okay. And, obviously, the due diligence by our fire department and our experts, has gone before them, and I have full confidence in them. Were there to be a catastrophic event or incident, is there any specialized personnel or training or equipment that is necessary for us as a town to control that event?
So we are providing, I'll answer the three questions you asked. We are providing the specialized training to the fire department. As I just did, there's a very similar system in Stillwater, New York. It's not the same technology, but the same size. Just finished training their fire department. No specialized equipment, just the knowledge and the understanding of what they're dealing with. Talking about the chemistries, the approach pattern. As far as if there was a catastrophic failure, and just, I didn't get a chance to introduce myself, but I was with Con Ed the last dozen years. I'm a fire chief, currently a deputy fire chief and fire marshal. I sit on the NFPA committees that write the standards for this stuff. Why? Because I care. Both my kids are engineers, both work for General Dynamics. So I got to prove to them that they're not the smartest ones in the world. One's programming Tomahawk missiles, the other one's building submarines at Groton, so I got to keep up. But anyway, sorry about the digression, but I do care. I've been a firefighter for 40 years since I was 16. Paramedic and an EMT currently. In emergency management, and that's why they have me come out and talk, because I'm not a safe. And if I didn't believe this was safe, I wouldn't be standing here, and that's the God's honest truth. So if there was a catastrophic failure, it would self-vent, it would shut down, and the hazard to the firefighters, to people in the parking lot, would be no different based on this battery system that self-consumes. So it's not like adding gasoline. It's not like what you see with an e-bike fire. Okay, it self-consumes, you let it burn out, and it's no more hazardous than parking a Suburban out there and lighting it on fire, or a Lincoln Navigator, or something that has that kind of load. Honestly, that's the same kind of hazard you would have if you had a fully involved vehicle fire in the parking lot versus this happening. We're not going to put water on it. We're going to spray down the equipment around it. We're going to let it self-consume because that's the safest way to handle it. It burns up all the gases. It burns up all the plastics. Instead of having partial combustion, when you have partial combustion, you get that nasty smoke. It's like when a fire first starts, when a fire's going out, that's when you get the most smoke. You don't get a lot of smoke when it's free burning because it's burning up all the constituents. So that's what we train them to do. And they also train to respond to it just like it was a electrical installation, a substation, a generation. We're not running in. again, we're managing the equipment. And in this case, the equipment's gonna be adjacent to what you already have out there. And if you didn't know one thing from another, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know the difference between the inverter that already sits there and the battery box, which is gonna be next to it. It all kind of looks the same. It looks like electric equipment.
Okay. Sound emitting, is there any sound from these units?
Hunter, I'll let you answer that, because I know there's some low decibel, there's a hum, right?
Correct.
Hunter?
Yes, when it's running at full power and running full cooling, there's some sound from that.
Do you have a decibel level?
Yeah.
I don't have any data on the decibel level of the,
Is it on the data sheet, Gunter?
It's on the confidential one.
Oh, okay. But we can get you that information.
Yeah, we need to know that.
Please,
especially for
because,
Kennedy.
because we're specifically asking, because we've already gone through extensive and expensive sound attenuation at one of these sites, so it's a concern for this board.
Sure, certainly. We get that.
and was that from the equipment that's out there now? Or that's something separate?
So, something separate.
Because I know that the inverters that you have out there now emit more noise than the battery does. So if you've
Gotcha.
been out-
Okay.
If you've been out and stood and looked at the existing equipment from the solar, that inverter when it's running, like today or.
Is louder than
louder
what?
than the battery, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just one last question / inquiry. Looking at the total profits, right, or expected profits, to RWE, looking at the potential benefits, to the town of Southington. One of the things that I thought in my mind, knowing that you guys were coming back, is, I'm kind of not sold on this idea that, that this is a set lease payment, right? Because there's a lot of variables that even yourselves as the energy company don't know, right? So on a P&L statement, you can't write down a number right now. Because,
An annual ground lease?
correct.
Yeah, we can. It's $25,000 a year.
Well, no, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I'm saying on your P&L statement, from these battery installations, you cannot write down a concrete figure on what you're gonna generate from that installation.
Oh,
Correct, it's modeled.
So-
I misunderstood your question.
Right. So my point is driving at what you just said, which is you don't know your profits, but you're only committing to us this set payment. Why not present an alternative model where either there's an operating kickback or a variable lease payment or an incentive like installing EV chargers at the battery installations that can run off of that energy, free to the town of Southington, things of this nature. Have these been talked about? Have they been discussed? And kind of what's your feedback or what's your pushback when you hear things like this from me and other people?
I want to address this to start with. This has been mentioned before, but I want to just bring this up again because it actually is, in my opinion, a very significant incentive. And that's the islanding capability, that when the grid goes down, the battery will be able to island the site and continue to provide power, and combined with the solar energy that you have, it could do that for indefinite periods of time. That is a very big incentive that you don't see most places, like the Ardsley school that we talked about earlier does not have that. because that's not part of the program. This is actually one of the special incentives for the customers for this program, that you get that benefit and you get it with no charge. And in addition to that, you get lease payments. Whereas most sites, if they wanted to make their system, their site capable to island, it would be an expensive program to do. So that is a substantial incentive that I wanted to start off just reiterating.
So if you guys don't understand what islanding is, so in the event that we have an incident and they, I'm sorry, Eversource cannot provide you power. Switch is open, it islands your system between the PV, your existing solar, and the battery, and that'll sustain you indefinitely as the PV is working during the day and the battery at night. So what, that's like a free generator, where typically it's not coupled both AC and DC. So this will be coupled to take the DC power from your solar panels. It will be coupled to take the power going in from the grid, so you always have 4 hour, 1 megawatts, 4 hour battery. So it is very unique, and it's because why is it a great place to put it? And I'm not trying to sell it, but because you already have the infrastructure. If you didn't have the infrastructure, it would be just dropping a battery, and it wouldn't really you wouldn't have that incentive because it wouldn't be connected into the system. So,
Okay, so to your point, RWE at this point basically thinks that they've incentivized this project enough for the town of Southington to either accept it as is or not. They're not willing to discuss or contemplate other payment structures or incentives to install these batteries.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement.
Okay?
So getting back to what I said originally.
Yep.
I still think, and I thank you for trying to answer all the questions, that the technical questions that Sean asked,
Sure.
which I would not understand.
Happy to.
But I really do think it would be very helpful if we could speak to a place where this is in place. And
Steve's
really
gonna make
try to work
arrangements,
on
yeah.
that, 'cause
He's
I
gonna
think
make
that would
arrangements.
be something that would make me understand it better, and I could ask them questions. Don't you? Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's always valuable to talk to an end user.
Right.
To see what their
Correct.
experience has been.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
James?
I don't know. So I'm going to ask one question here, and I'm not sure if that's maybe something you can answer or if they can answer, but the prices that you pay for the electricity, what are the rates for at peak and off peak? I mean,
Richard, did you hear that question?
Not completely. Can you repeat it, please?
what are the prices for the electricity that we'd pay, or I guess you would pay to charge your pack for off peak? And what would you discharge? What's the rate that you discharge at for?
The Eversource rates.
Right.
Yeah, so you talk about the difference between off-peak and on-peak pricing?
Right.
Yeah, so the majority of that price, that would be the energy price. So there's a supply agreement that the school has with a energy supplier. And currently, it's a fixed price regardless if it's off-peak or on-peak, but that can be negotiated moving forward. You could probably negotiate a difference and get a lower off-peak price, and that would help. Then you can use the battery to help reduce costs further.
But that's a function of their business management office, not of this
Yes,
project.
it's a function
Right.
of what
Okay.
kind of supply contract you negotiate with the provider.
We, being the fact that this isn't Con Edison, we're not in that game as a supplier, just so you understand that.
Yep.
If we were in Westchester, then
So there's producing
We
and
could
there's
help in
supplying.
negotiating
Be
that
locked in.
help in modeling, what the benefit would be. But it would have to be a negotiation with the supplier.
So next year, so basically next budget, we'll be looking at, because our energy management contract, or really our fixed price, and Mrs. Mellett, I'm going to pull this out of my hat, so I could be wrong, but it's Blue Mountain Energy at 16.9 cents. per kilowatt hour?
No, I think it's NG Resources, and it's for the generation portion is 0.8649 per kilowatt hour. And I believe that agreement is good until October of 2024.
Yeah.
So yes.
So we have to, in this budget,
in
we
the
have to
budget season.
renegotiate it.
Mhm.
Because it goes back to your question about the solar savings. And so when we had Adam do financial analysis for us, he said we weren't seeing significant savings because we locked in at such a low rate that it was, essentially if the kilowatt hour, the demand price were higher,
It's the lowest I've ever heard.
yeah, we'd see more savings. But he said when it expires this fall, you're not going to get that price again, and then you're going to see significant savings because you're going to be relying on your DC power from your solar arrays. So that's why that was kind of the one piece. I don't know where I got Blue Mountain Energy from.
Sounded good.
Yeah.
They're providing a lot through the Eversource transmission
Okay.
system.
Okay.
They're the Pennsylvania company with the solar arrays in Wallingford, where I live. That's where I got that from. Never
Okay.
mind.
All right.
I knew I had it somewhere.
I think we're good for now with questions. I'm going to guess that we're going to have more coming up,
Yes.
and we'll make arrangements to talk to,
I'll
With Adam,
connect
yeah.
with Sean and gather the technical questions that we weren't able to answer, and then relay those on to you all from Adam, through Adam. And then I'll also work with Adam and Mr. Romano sends his regards that he couldn't be here. He had a passing of a family member, and so he's got family in town for services. So he planned on being here tonight, but
Okay.
obviously I excused him for the evening.
okay, okay.
Thank you
Thank you,
very much.
gentlemen.
Appreciate
Thank
your
you,
time.
thank you for coming again.
Sure.
Thank you, Gunter.
Just in case there's any safety questions that come up, please feel free to email me.
All right.
That's my old Con Ed card, but same information.
Okay.
Thanks for your time. I hope-
Appreciate it.
No, we appreciate your time. Yes,
I think that, talk to Ardsley, and that's the closest to
That's the
what
closest.
you're gonna see.
Yeah.
But just understand from a business model, it's different because it's a different utility.
okay,
It
Thank you.
does get confusing when you say, well, how come you're getting this and we're getting that? So,
okay.
thank you, guys.
Thank you
Safe.
much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I also wanted just to update that because the one that I was looking at was one of our solar sites. So the NG contract goes through 10 of 2024, and it's actually 0.734.
That's even
So
less.
it's even lower,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. But when did that contract,
It started in December of 2021,
oh, okay,
and the rate before that was closer to the 0.897.
okay. Okay. So,
When Mrs. Millett and I were doing the budget, we knew that number, and we were excited about that because Adam gave us that information about the solar arrays. But then Adam gave us the caution, like, you're going to have to account for an energy increase in your budget next year because you're not going to get that price again in your new contract. So, fingers crossed.
okay. Next item on the agenda is policy 3541, transportation, second reading.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Board of Ed approve policy 3541, transportation, as presented by the Policy and Personnel Committee.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Move that the board approve policy 6161, equipment, books, and materials as presented by the Policy and Personnel Committee.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, now we're to new business, class size reports. Mr. Medancy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So included with your information and on the portal tonight is it's annual, and I think I want to add, just one, a little bit lucky that we postponed a week because it was nice for us to get, registration really kicks up right at the end of the summer. So by not meeting August 10th and meeting tonight, it gave us a little bit better data in terms of accurately reflecting what the class sizes are now with that extra week of registration occurring. And as you can see within the grid, across the grade levels in all schools, we are within or below the board guidelines for class sizes. I know there was concern brought forward in early summer about the fourth grade at Hatton Elementary School, and we did pick up a couple registrations there. So we did add a section there. But consequently, we also did not realize the level of enrollment that we thought we might get at a different elementary school. So we were able to collapse a section there, and so the FTE became a wash in that instance. And so we also did not get an influx of new registrations this summer. So kind of a blessing for us that it didn't force us to open any new sections or add staff beyond what we knew with current student enrollment.
Does anyone have any questions?
No, it's just wonderful that we are keeping our class size. It's always been one of our priorities. How are we are doing okay with staffing too, Mr. Medianci?
You know, I've had this conversation with people, you know, knock on wood, we are doing very well with staffing. It's, you know, any vacancies we have right now are because of late or last minute resignations. But, you know, by and large, we continue, and in hard to fill areas. We're posting these positions, whether it's world language, whether it's family consumer science, and we're still getting folks. Hired 3 outstanding math teachers this summer, which is an extreme shortage area. So we continue to be very lucky that we're able to fill our vacancies, and I think, fingers crossed, we could be fully staffed for the opening day.
Good, thank you.
Awesome. I was going to say that this is the best I think I've ever remembered
Long time, you're right.
seeing. I mean, I remember years where we're hiring somebody 3 days before school starts, and this is awesome. So thank you for providing the information to us. Okay, obsolete textbooks. We have a motion.
I'll make a motion, move that the board approve the disbursement or disposal of outdated textbooks that are no longer useful to the education program as recommended by administration.
Second?
Okay. Any discussion, any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And now, public communication. Anyone from the public wants to speak on anything non-agenda related? Oh, my. Mr. Darrenowski, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
No, we have to adjourn to.
I was thinking,
no, too
oh,
late.
my good, oh. No, we can't, sorry.
And we have to go back to.
We are going back into executive session. Rats, I forgot, yeah. Okay, so we are going back into executive session.
I really don't understand how they're making money on this battery.
No, I'm serious, I'm not being fresh.
You guys know? How are they making money on this?
Oh,
Yeah, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. And you can send it to me and I'll,
Colleen.
yes, ma'am.